Okay, so you want to buy a private island. Not just any island, the most famous one on Earth. The one that just sold for half price, sitting in the turquoise water off St. Thomas, like a bargain nobody's brave enough to pick up. You'll clean it up, build a resort. 25 rooms, 5 stars, your own helicopter on the pad. Sip something cold and watch the money roll in. Money was never your problem. How hard can paradise be? Here's the strange part. Little St. James is the only piece of trophy real estate in the world that got cheaper because of what happened on it. 71 acres of Caribbean paradise. Helipad, 2 pools, 4 villas, 3 beaches. And it sold at a record discount that almost nobody wanted. Think about that. A view this good, a price this low, and the line of buyers was empty. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why the most notorious island on the planet went for less than half its asking price. What it actually costs to own before a single guest checks in. Why, 3 years after the sale, nobody has built a thing on it. And why the cheap land was never the point. First, the price tag, because that's the part that made headlines. And private islands come in tiers. They are not the same purchase. At the bottom, raw land. Undeveloped virgin islands acreage trades for $500,000 to $2 million an acre. Epstein's other island, Great St. James, 161 acres of forest and shoreline, went for around $20 million back in 2016. Mostly trees. A nice view and a mosquito problem. The next tier up, a starter island with bones already in it. That's what Little St. James was in 1998, when Epstein bought it for $7.95 million. By 2019, the same dirt was valued at almost $64 million. You didn't do anything, the number just grew. Then the top tier, the trophy, fully kitted out. Helipad, private dock, its own power plant and water system. A fibre optic cable run in from St. Thomas, 2 pools, a main house, 4 guest villas, a gym, even a tiki hut. The whole pair hit the market in 2022 for $125 million. That's the fantasy. Now here's the receipt. In May 2023, an investor named Stephen Dekoff bought both islands for $60 million. Half the ask. Split it down the middle. And Little St. James alone runs somewhere between 30 and 45 million. And it's almost certainly the price here half. Little St. James had the compound, the villas, the power and the water already in the ground, while its neighbour was mostly forest. The most infamous real estate on Earth, marked down like a dented can on the clearance shelf. Not bad, right? So where's the catch? Start with the obvious question. Where is the money supposed to come from? A resort makes money exactly one way. It rents rooms. Take the nightly rate, multiply by how full you are, multiply by how many rooms you've got, times 365 nights. That's the whole machine. Easiest way to picture it. A hotel room is a banana. It rots every single night. A room you don't sell tonight is gone forever. You cannot put it back on the shelf and sell it twice tomorrow. So the entire game is keeping 25 rooms full at a punishing nightly price. Run the numbers on Dekoff's planned resort. 25 rooms. Charge $2,500 a night. Fill about 2/3 of them. That alone is roughly $14.8 million a year just from the rooms. Now add the restaurant, the spa, the bar, the boat trips, and you clear $20 million. And the timing looks great on paper. Virgin Islands hotels are filling up. Occupancy climbed over 4% in 2025, and they charge about 30% more than the Caribbean average. 20 million a year in paradise. With your name on the dock, can you picture it? Good, but notice the ceiling before you get comfortable. 25 rooms is 25 rooms. You can't bolt a 100th floor onto a private island. The water's right there. So your entire revenue is capped by simple physics before stigma ever walks into the room. Now look at the bill for owning the place before a single guest ever shows up. The deal closes. You've wired $60 million. Handshakes all around. And then the invoices start. The very first one arrives at the closing table. The Virgin Islands charge a stamp tax on the sale. It climbs in brackets: 2%, 2.5%, 3%, and 3.5% over $5 million. On a $60 million deal, that last rate puts you at roughly $2.1 million. Just to sign your name. Then actual ownership begins and it never stops. Property tax, a couple $100,000 a year. Insurance, in the middle of a hurricane corridor, $500,000 to $2 million. Security, because an empty island full of villas is a target, up to $1 million. Staff and maintenance. And remember, Epstein ran about 70 people out there in 2008. Call it $1 to $4 million a year. Boats and helicopters to ferry every person and every crate of supplies across the water, up to $1 million more. Power, water, desalination, sewage, another $1.5 million. Landscaping, because the jungle is actively trying to take the place back, up to $2 million. Lawyers, permits, compliance, up to $2 million on top. Add all of it together. Little St. James burns somewhere between $4 and $10 million a year just to exist. Call the middle of that around $16,000 a day. No guests, no revenue, nothing happening. The lights are just on. And because there's no resort yet, none of it comes back. You aren't running a business. You're paying, out of pocket, every single day for the privilege of owning an empty island. And that's if nothing goes wrong. Here's the thing, though. The reason the island still sits empty isn't the money. It's 2 walls, and no check on Earth buys past them. Wall 1. Permitting. The Virgin Islands Planning Authority scrutinizes every single thing you want to build, and a project like this needs a full environmental impact study before a shovel touches the ground. The island already has a rap sheet. Epstein himself was fined $1.73 million in 2017 for clearing land he had no permission to touch. Now stack remote construction on top, where every beam, every generator, every worker arrives by boat or by air, and the cost overruns start writing themselves. And before you build anything new, the island itself needs repair. Erosion control, septic upgrades, ground that was cleared and never restored. Environmental liabilities the settlement flagged, and that nobody has fully put a number on yet. Wall 2. The name. This is Epstein's Island. Say it out loud and you understand the entire problem. No luxury hotel brand on the planet wants its flag flying over that dock. Guests think twice. Lenders charge a premium or just walk away. Insurers flinch. That caps how full you get and how much you can charge, no matter how perfect the rooms are. Want proof both walls are real and not just theory? Dekoff closed the deal in May 2023 and announced a 25-room, 5-star resort, open by 2025. By 2026, what had he actually built? A permit for a warehouse, plus an environmental assessment that still isn't finished. 3 years of ownership, a warehouse permit. Meet Stephen Dekoff, a Virgin Islands resident and a distressed debt investor, which means he built an entire career buying the things nobody else would touch, at prices nobody else would pay. So naturally, he bought the most distressed asset in the world. This is a man whose whole career is a bet that the market is too scared of something. He looked at the most radioactive address in the hemisphere and saw a number that was too low. 60 million for 2 islands that were listed at 125. On paper, the deal of the century. Maybe he's right. The math just says he has at least a decade to prove it. Then reality showed up. The resort hasn't risen. The schedule slipped past. And here's the part that makes the bargain genuinely hollow. Under the $105 million settlement that Epstein's estate signed with the territory in 2022, half of whatever Little St. James sells for is owed to the Virgin Islands, money set aside for a fund for his victims. So, roughly 30 million of Dekoff's 60 flowed straight back to the territory the moment the deal closed. He didn't simply buy an island. He bought a name every person on Earth recognizes, a settlement bolted onto the deed, and a bill that just keeps arriving. So with land this cheap, what does the math actually say you walk away with? Time to pull it all together and answer the real question. How much do you make if you do this exactly right? Scenario 1, the optimistic case. You spend the money, 60 million for the land, another 75 million to build the ultra-luxury resort. Call it 135 million, all in. You charge $4,000 a night, and you fill 3/4 of the rooms. That's around 40 million in revenue and maybe 10 million in actual profit once the costs come out. On a 135 million investment, that's a return of about 7%. And payback on the cash flow alone? North of 13 years. The smarter exit isn't to run it at all. It's to finish the thing, then sell the resort for 8 to 12 times its profit, 50 to 100 million, or carve off 10 branded villas at $10 million each and pocket 100 million up front. Now scenario 2, the realistic case. The stigma holds the way stigma does. You can't get $4,000 a night for a room on Epstein's island. You get 1,500, maybe 2,500, and the rooms sit half empty anyway. Revenue lands between 10 and 20 million, profit between 2 and 5. Against 135 million, that's a return under 4%. Worse than a savings account. With hurricanes. And that's before a bank gets involved. No lender finances Epstein's island cheap, so the interest eats whatever thin return is left. And a niche product on top, a 25-room ultra-luxury resort, needs the world's richest travelers to keep choosing it. One recession, one shift in how the wealthy vacation, and the occupancy you modeled just evaporates. The difference between a brand-blessed resort and a stalled, stigma-capped one is the gap between 7% and 2%. On the same island, the same $135 million. One number you can't control. And here's what makes even the optimistic case a guess. There has never been a clean Epstein Island sale to measure against. None. The 60 million price tag, restrictions and all might be the only honest data point that exists. So if you do decide to buy Epstein's Island, just remember the one thing this whole deal is built to teach you. The land was always the cheap part. Everything you need to actually use it again. The build, the brand, the permits, the decades of upkeep, the history you cannot scrub off the deed. That's where the money goes. And it goes for years. Here's the twist, though. Those 71 acres are worth maybe $70 million as nothing but raw dirt. More than Dekoff effectively paid for them, which means the only clean money on Little St. James was never the resort. It was the resale. You weren't buying a hotel. You were buying a piece of land you have to launder of its own past, and quietly betting the world forgets faster than the upkeep adds up. Park that same 60 million almost anywhere else, and it earns more than the resort ever will. No hurricane season, no permit hearings, no name to apologize for, because on this island the house already got paid. Half the sale went to the victims before the new owner ever got the keys. Everyone takes their cut before you do. You just get what's left over. 71 acres, a warehouse permit, and a name you can't sell.